Hey guys, my name is Jeff, and this is the 2024 Mazda MX-5 Miata, which I believe is the best sports car you can buy new today. And for 2024, it's been updated to what we would call the ND3 version, which is quite possibly the last update we'll see for the 4th generation before the possible introduction of a 5th generation Miata. For 2024, prices start at $29,000. The exterior remains mostly unchanged with the exception of the new headlights and taillights. Underneath, Mazda offers an asymmetrical limited slip differential developed in-house for the manual transmission versions of the Club and Grand Touring trims. The power steering's been adjusted to try and reduce any twitchiness, and perhaps most importantly is the interior has been updated with a new, larger display while using Apple CarPlay is actually touchscreen compatible. Otherwise, you'll just continue to use the Mazda Command Control module, but now with a bigger screen. The exterior remains mostly unchanged for 2024 with the exception of those new LED DRL headlights and of course the new taillights, which are also LED and look a little bit deeper as well. Now these changes are quite simple, but I don't mind that because if you ask me, that keeps the cost down low and I appreciate that more. And in all reality, you're not even really going to notice these changes unless you really start to look for them on the updated models. And this thing is a cheap entry-level sports car first and foremost, and so keeping the price low and the weight low is critical. Now you might have noticed this car is finished in snowflake white pearl, and it does in fact feature the manual soft top, and this one is finished in black, and I prefer that. Yes, the 2024 Miatas can still come with the RF or the power retractable fastback, but I think the soft top is the move. For one, this saves you about 150 pounds over the RF, and this is a really nice soft top. You even have a glass rear window, but you can also drop this thing in about 3 seconds flat, and it's flush with the body once it's down. And that's not even an exaggeration about how quickly you could throw this thing down. It's quite impressive. The RF, on the other hand, it does look better when you have the top up than the soft top does. However, when you have the top down, the RF is really more like a target top where only this section is open, and you have this big blockage here for the convertible mechanisms that blocks your blind spots, whereas the soft top's much more open experience. So I just much prefer it overall, both for the sake of weight savings, which there are some other cool features on this car, like the fact that we have an aluminum hood and an aluminum trunk are very cool as well. There's some other cool stuff underneath. For example, fully independent suspension. This is in fact a sports car. If you get the Club or Grand Touring trims, that get you the Bilstein dampers underneath. You have 11-inch disc brakes, both in the front and the rear, front and rear stabilizer bars as well. And the wheels will vary based on what trim you get. The base Sport will come with 15-inch wheels. Here we have the larger 17-inch wheels that come on the Grand Touring trim. You also get power heated windows, keyless entry because it is in fact still a modern car. As we come around to the rear here, you can see the trunk, which can be popped with the key, some of our various cameras, safety features, and even a dual exhaust, which is a pretty cool sporting feature, but for the most part, unchanged for 2024. Under the hood is the same powertrain we saw introduced in 2019 for the ND2 update for this 4th generation Miata. It's a naturally aspirated dual overhead cam 2-liter 4-cylinder motor that produces 181 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque and revs to 7,500 RPM, which is absolutely wonderful. One of the most powerful naturally aspirated motors that we've seen in a Miata. Now that engine can then be paired with a 6-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual transmission. Some trims like the Club are manual only, but you can get an automatic in the more luxurious Grand Touring trim. That being said, I think everybody that buys a Miata should buy the manual because of course that's going to give it better resale value down the line if you decide to shake it up, but it's also good, it's going to be more fun to drive. I know that some people just want a fun convertible, that's why Mazda sells them with automatics, but the manual's the one to have, especially if you buy a Club or Grand Touring trim, where you then get the new Mazda asymmetrical limited slip differential, which is new for 2024, developed specifically to go into cars like the Miata to make it that much more fun to drive, powering the rear wheels. On top of that, look at how far the engine is set back. The front of the engine is about where the center of the wheels are, and so it basically makes it almost a front mid-engine mount, and that helps to give this car near 50-50 weight distribution, which is quite impressive. Another change for 2024 is they also tried to increase the sound of the induction for the engine to try and make it more fun. In my opinion, they should just have a sort of fun exhaust for this car, or get an aftermarket exhaust if you live in a state that lets you do that. Sorry to those of you in California. And I think you'd get a lot more sort of fun feel out of this car as you drive it. Now, moving on to performance, this car is incredibly lightweight. It weighs 2,341 pounds. So with that engine under the hood, it'll do 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds, a quarter mile in 14.3 seconds, with a top speed of 137 miles per hour, which is incredibly impressive for this car. It also features some cool things that'll help, like this strut brace, for example, to help keep the car relatively safe. And everything's easy to access too. All the fluids, your air filter, fuses, battery, etc. And I like to see that because it makes it a little bit easier to do your own maintenance should you feel so inclined. Now let's talk fuel economy, as some of you will likely daily your car, or maybe even take it on road trips. The EPA rates the ND3 at 26 miles per gallon city, 34 miles per gallon highway, and 29 miles per gallon combined. And given that it has an 11.89 gallon fuel tank, you can expect around 300 to 350 miles of range on a single tank. And as a Miata owner and somebody that's taken their car on multiple road trips, I can tell you that it is incredibly easy to get 35 miles per gallon out of your Miata. So not only is this a fun, sporty car to drive, but it also gets fantastic fuel economy and will save you tons of money on gas, making it one of the best cars that you could daily drive in this day and age. As long as you don't have kids, I suppose. The 24 ND3 Miata has one of the best interiors on sale today for a sports car, and let me tell you why. Now, I know it looks very simple, but that's the magic of it. You have just 2 seats, a manual transmission, you have a simple multimedia display, but analog gauges, and you get air conditioning, which is fantastic. And we'll hop into more of the details in a sec, but I want to give you an overview. This is going to look just like a lot of the interiors, with one big update, that being the screen that you'll find in the 4th generation Miatas. This particular car has the tan Napa leather, so that gets you these leather trimmed seats, and then you'll also find leather on the steering wheel and your other soft touch points like the shifter and the handbrake. There are some cool options as you go to the higher trims. This car is a Grand Touring, so you can get the optioned Bose 9-speaker sound system with speakers in the headrests, and these particular seats are also heated. Some of those options aren't available on the lower trim, so that's a good reason to opt for the Grand Touring. Some of the features you see here, like the color-matched top sections of the doors, are of course standard features and will change based on your body color. You do get power adjustable mirrors, power windows, and of course your option, as I mentioned earlier, of either a power folding top or a manual folding top like this one, which can be raised so quickly. These do actually kind of act as roll bars, even though they have all this fascia on them. They will be semi-protective. You have a wind guard here, some extra storage that's back behind the seats. It's kind of hard to see when you have the seat backs all the way in. You do get some cup holders that are quite adjustable. If we get in here, you can actually move these cup holders up and out to the side, which is one of my favorite features of the interior. But let's go ahead and start the car up so we can get into some of the technical aspects of the car. Now, as we start it up, you can see these screens come on, and you technically have 2 screens. You have your main display here, which is what was updated for 2024, and this little screen over here. Starting with the big updates, this is now a new 8.8-inch screen, so it is bigger and feels easier to access. And one of the other interesting changes that can vary by trim is you get wireless CarPlay if you get the Club and Grand Touring, but the Sport will only have wired CarPlay. You also get Android Auto, and the other cool differentiator is while you're using CarPlay, it actually turns into a touchscreen compatibility screen, which is very cool. Otherwise, you'll be using this Mazda Command Control module, which is fairly standard as far as Mazdas go, but that is kind of an important differentiator when using this car. You also have Alexa voice activation for all sorts of various features, Mazda navigation, all that good stuff that you would expect, Sirius XM, all that type of stuff. Below that, you have these 2 different vents, again, fairly standard for the 4th gen. Our air conditioning conditioning and climate controls, our heated seat controls, some chargers down below, and even a nice cubby, 6-speed manual shifter, our handbrake, those Mazda controls. We have another little storage cubby here and more storage behind us. In front of me here, we have the steering wheel, which does actually have cruise controls you can see over here on the right. On the left side, we have a lot of our infotainment controls, including volume, phone controls, and even controls that'll actually adjust this left digital display, which is the only other digital display in the car there from the center. I'm glad they didn't do the whole thing digital. I love seeing our TAC and speedo still being analog. That's a great feature to have. And of course, your gas is on the left there as well. This is, of course, adjustable telescopic steering column here, which is going to be great because this car can fit a lot of different heights. Even though this isn't quite as big as the 3rd generation Miata interior, you can fit a lot of tall people in here and adjust this car quite a bit. Some of the other changes is actually going to be over here. Now we have our traction control buttons and some of our other various lighting features, but most importantly is this one here. And this is actually the DSC track button. And this is a cool feature that doesn't totally defeat your traction and stability, but it'll actually turn it off so that it doesn't use it as frequently. So it's going to allow you to do more sliding around the track and hold more angles, but the minute the car detects you going too far for an angle, well then it's going to kick in traction and stability control. So this is going to be great for a track day if you take your car out, or maybe even a back road. But if you're going drifting in your ND Miata, that might be not ideal as it might kick in. But the thing I love about this interior is just how simple it is. To me, it's not an overwhelming interior. I like how simple it is. The analog gauges make it feel more engaging while you're driving. A real 6-speed manual that is in fact connected to the manual transmission feels great to use. You do get the nice luxuries like all of the audio you can ask for using it for road trips, and still get air conditioning. I truly think that this is one of the best interiors on any new sports car because of the simplicity, but you still get the luxuries that matter, like things you want to do are power garage controls, and you still have mirrors, they're just not backlit. And I love everything that Mazda did here. So what's it like to drive the 2024 ND3 Miata? Well, I'll tell you right now that I don't really notice all of the driving changes that Mazda made. However, all of the characteristics that make the 4th generation ND Miata wonderful are immediately obvious the second you start driving this car. The car is so lightweight and nimble, you just get into it. I mean, 2,300 pounds in change is insanely light by modern standards. Most 4-door sedans are over 4,000 pounds these days, and so this thing really is wonderful. To me, what stands out the most is always going to be this manual transmission, which obviously has that new limited slip differential, but this transmission is so wonderful. It's not heavily computer-aided like a lot of the ones you'll find in other cars, and because it's such a lightweight car, when you get on a back road, it's just a great experience. Everything feels responsive. The car feels like it's really wrapped around you, and that's really what you want in a driver's car. Now, you make some sacrifices. I'll say right now it's a fairly cramped interior, but they do it really well. They make the most of the space that's in here. At 6 foot, I can sit in here quite comfortably. The second you put a second person in here, it does feel a bit more congested, but it's really not that bad. For road trips, if you're going by yourself, I think this would be just fine. The suspension's not so stiff that it becomes inhospitable to daily drive. I think it's totally fine in that regard. If you're going to take it to the track, however, I'd say you might want to modify it. My other kind of gripe for the driving experience is the exhaust. I just wish the car at least had a exhaust mode or a track mode or something like that, where the car got a bit more vocal with you. You get a little bit of the kind of reverberations and a little bit of noise in the cabin of the car, but it's really not that interesting. So I could see a lot of people adding exhausts on these in the aftermarket. But other than that, I mean, I love this car, and I think the fact that they updated the interior, which was possibly one of the biggest complaints about this car, I think makes it an even bigger selling point for 2024. I'm glad they didn't rock the boat and only made subtle lifestyle changes. The ND1 to ND2 is where the biggest changes were made that really affected this car in a positive way to give it the most powerful naturally aspirated motor the Miata's ever seen, while also being one of the lightest Miatas. So that is an incredibly great change for this car. It really is one of the best driving experiences, not for the money, but as a whole, that you can have from any new car on sale today. So with that, that is a quick look at the updated for 2024 ND3 Mazda Miata. Now, the biggest changes, of course, are going to be that new limited slip differential that was developed in-house, and of course, the infotainment settings in the interior for that new display that even has that touchscreen capability with the wireless CarPlay in the top two trims. The rest of the car is absolutely fantastic, but we've known that ever since the ND2 update in 2019, and all of that greatness just got even better for 2024. Now with that, which one do you buy? There are three different trim models. You have the Sport, then you have the Club in the middle price-wise, and then you have the Grand Touring. Now the Club is kind of, as the name implies, more so the racer version. It doesn't come with some of the extra luxuries that would add a little bit of weight, and it's manual transmission only, so that one's kind of exclusive. The odds of finding that at a dealership as well are also really, really low. You're much more likely to find a few Sports, but probably mostly Grand Touring trims at the dealership. As far as which one do you buy? Well, personally, I would go for either a Club or a Grand Touring trim, obviously in manual only. I think the automatic has no place on the Miata. Get the manual, get that awesome limited slip differential as well, and all of the driving enjoyment. The reason I say that is because there's a big upgrade in terms of all of the luxuries that are available. The wireless CarPlay, the options for the Bose speaker system, even heated seats for the Grand Touring trim. All of that can make a big difference, especially if you're going to daily this car or drive it a lot. That can be a pretty big difference in your enjoyment in the car. And plus, it's not that big of a price differential. You see, the Sport starts at $29,000, but you can actually get into the Grand Touring trim for only about $5,000 more, and even less to get into the Club. The Club just won't have some of the luxury items like those heated seats. So that's what I personally think, but you let me know down below what you think about the updates for the ND3 Miata, or which one you would choose or pick up. And of course, if you could leave me a thumbs up on the video, I'd really appreciate it. Consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future, and even more of my NC Miata content. And of course, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.